We've got a trailer coming out this Thursday for the forthcoming Superman movie that's written, directed, produced by James Gunn. And I am absolutely 100% not a scooper. I don't do that. I don't even follow that stuff. I don't like having movies spoiled for me. So this is none of that. What I'm offering today and my predictions are based on my work of cultural analysis through the lens of theology and philosophy, where I try to notice trends emerging in popular culture. And for the past year, I've been talking about this vibe shift that's happening in culture, and it's about to explode even more in the zeitgeist in the coming years. I'm the guy that way back in late summer of 2023 was predicting the popular resurgence of the band Creed, and then they announced a reunion tour, and then they exploded virally all over TikTok, Instagram, and X, and Twitter, and all of that stuff. So trust me when I tell you, I really, really think something significant in pop culture is happening with this forthcoming Superman movie. I believe we are going to get our first meta-modern Superman. He's going to be aspirational, wholesome, and he's going to be seemingly naive to postmodern sensibilities. The juxtaposition of a sincere Superman surrounded by characters who are stuck in the hyper-ironic, hyper self-aware, kind of typical James Gunn dialogue. He is going to stand out as so sincere. And that's the sincerity I think we're all deeply longing for as we come out of late stage postmodernism into this new metamodern frame. Look up. That's the aspirational call that's on the first real poster that they've released this week. And I think it's the perfect aspirational call for those of us living in this world where we felt trapped in these cycles of cynicism for far too long. I think this trailer, as soon as it drops on Thursday, is going to give us a glimpse into this meta-modern vision of Superman, and it's instantly going to make the cynical, dark Superman archetypes, the Homelander types, it's going to instantly make those feel as passé as skinny jeans all of a sudden feel. Now, I really actually liked Man of Steel. I really liked Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman. I think it was really misunderstood. When that movie came out, though, popular culture in America wasn't ready for another Christopher Reeves-esque truth, justice, and the American way Superman. We just weren't. That version of Superman couldn't be cast in that particular cultural climate back in 2016 because we were still deeply enmeshed in this postmodern cynicism. Postmodernism is a philosophical and ideological movement that challenges the legitimacy of overarching guiding stories or meta-narratives. It challenges those stories and it calls into question universal notions of truth and justice. It calls into question views about God, especially those stories about God that are told by the cultures in power. Clark and Lois's boss at the Daily Planet, Perry, he regularly tells Clark, in Batman v Superman, he's regularly telling him, those Smallville values of honesty, integrity, hard work, truth, and justice, those are ideas from the past. They don't fit in America anymore. And that was 2016, but things have changed since 2016. For many at that time, this godlike figure with an S on his chest wasn't a symbol of hope. He was a symbol of oppression simply because he had power. And in so much of this postmodern critique, to be in a position of power automatically means a position of oppression. And that's why Lex embodied this kind of millennial energy and attitude towards God, towards those in power. In that portrayal of Lex Luthor, you see this kind of millennial energy embodied in that character who is in this quest to kill God, to expose Clark, to expose Superman as being a symbol of oppression. And that very much resonated with the culture in 2016, but that culture has shifted. It's not like that anymore. I think we even saw in Zack Snyder's Death of Superman what we saw in the Death of Superman comics going back to the 90s, and in the Kingdom Come comics where Superman retired back in 1996. I think you see a recurring pattern that when we kill God, when we kill Superman, when Superman's no longer around, that vacuum of power isn't just left as an empty vacuum. Something else comes in to fill that void. I think what we've discovered since the 2014 to 2020 cycle of hyper deconstruction, intense activist culture, is I think we've discovered that the gods that have come to fill that vacuum of power are gods that we like way less than Superman, symbolically way less than the traditional religious stories, values, and morals that we've come accustomed to here in the West. Now, when James Gunn was announced as the new head of DC, I was pretty skeptical about that move. Gunn's work is also filled with this hyper-ironic, hyper-self-aware postmodern sensibilities. Now, Snyder's tendency, which was still very postmodern, was to take a more dark, postmodern, deconstructive tone, like Watchmen. You know, he famously brought the pages of Watchmen, that infamous graphic novel, very postmodern graphic novel, critiquing the heroes and critiquing our hero stories of the past, and he brought that onto the big screen. And it always seemed like Snyder was trying to capture that same sort of Watchmen vibe. That was Snyder's move. Now, it's not like James Gunn hasn't been postmodern. In fact, James Gunn has just had a very different expression of postmodern sensibilities. Instead of this like dark, really typically void of any humor storytelling that we saw from Snyder, Gunn kind of goes the opposite route. He kind of goes the Rick and Morty route, where all of his dialogue is filled with hyper self-aware, hyper ironic, hyper cynical characters who are always like deconstructing. They're breaking the fourth wall. They're demonstrating all of these postmodern sensibilities. But instead of it being like dark and heavy, it has its own darkness to it oftentimes. It's much more in the vein of what we could call like comedic nihilism. It's a different kind of nihilism. And I realize that hasn't always been the case for James Gunn. I think what he tried to do with the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise is he tried to take those typical James Gunn-esque characters who are hyper self-aware, you know, they're hyper ironic, and he tried to make a meaningful story come out of it in the end. He tried to get at saying something sincere. And in that way, he's like approaching metamodernism. Metamodernism attempts to synthesize the best of modernism and postmodernism in an effort to get at something meaningful again after our cultural deconstruction left us without a positive reference point for meaning, purpose, and significance. So early stage metamodernism, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, used the ironic communication of postmodernism, but it applied it to trying to get at saying something sincere again, instead of just being purely cynical. Now, there is a place in this new metamodern moment where we can actually get beyond even the hyper-ironic and get into what I call post-ironic sincerity. Think of this as the space beyond cringe. It's post-cringe, where you actually embrace the cringe and you let down these hyperactive defense mechanisms. That fear that if you tried to say something sincere, you'd be perceived as naive and made fun of. It's the space beyond that. There's a place of freedom beyond that, where you get back to saying and feeling something better than cynicism. You feel something wholesome. I think James Gunn is going in that direction. Think of a character like Waymond in Everything Everywhere All at Once. His sincerity seems naive and pitiful at first. This is the kind of person that gets walked all over in the real world. But by the end of the film, you begin to see that his sincere kindness in a brutally cynical world is what the world actually needs. You know, the tagline here for Gunn's Superman is "Look Up." It's about feeling aspirational again. It's about risking the possibility of being naive in order to feel something hopeful and wholesome again. Now, I think the way Gunn sets this up is by surrounding Clark Kent, surrounding Superman with the typical cast of postmodern, hyper-ironic, self-aware, and comedically cynical characters that fill most of James Gunn's movies. But by Superman not even carrying an ounce of that self-aware cynicism, the audience will empathize with him. That stark juxtaposition of irony up against sincerity is going to give the audience permission to let their cynical guard down and truly hope for something sincere again. Now, I don't read or watch any of the Hollywood scoopers who get secrets from studio sets and spoil the movie. Again, I don't do that stuff. So I've got no inside knowledge here, but I suspect that either through like the plans of Lex Luthor or some other villain, I think one of the things that we're going to get is we're going to get this sincere Superman pitted up against someone nearly as powerful as him, maybe as powerful as him, which will serve as a kind of temptation to the audience to keep believing that postmodern lie, that the only thing that actually works in this world to get anything done is pure cold-hearted power. Maybe that's Ultraman. Ultraman is kind of like a parallel universe Superman who uses all of his power to oppress. Maybe it's the Elite and the character Manchester Black, that hyper cynical anti-hero who was featured in What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, a story that appeared in Action Comics number 775 for all you comic book geeks out there, way back in March of 2001. Or maybe it's a Magog from the Kingdom Come comics back in 1996. These might be too obscure of characters for general audiences. I totally understand that. So maybe they don't get incorporated into a first film in particular. I don't know. But it seems like something like that would make a lot of sense. If I was a filmmaker and I'm trying to put my finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist shift and I wanted to tell a Superman story, this would be the direction I'd go right now. But we'll see. I think this is the direction that the movie should go. I have a feeling like James Gunn does have his fingers on the pulse of what's bubbling up underneath the zeitgeist. I think this is the direction we'll head. We'll see. We got a trailer coming out on Thursday. I think I might even provide a instant reaction to it on Thursday. So if you like talking about this stuff, exploring in popular culture, the intersection of religion and philosophy with the stories that inform and do help guide our lives, I encourage you, subscribe, click that subscribe button below, follow along, and contribute in the comments below. What are you expecting from James Gunn's Superman movie? What do you think we're going to get in the trailer? I'd love to read your thoughts and comments. Thanks for watching.